Bethesda Game Studios is widely known as an RPG juggernaut. Their games do have a very particular flavor, but fans of the developer would argue that's exactly what makes them great. That being said, they made sequels for over 25 years before releasing Starfield. Was the brand new universe worth the wait? Spoilers ahead. The concept that became Starfield dates back over a decade, and the name was trademarked by Bethesda in 2013. As the concept was being refined, its aesthetic began being referred to as NASA punk, in reference to the combination of sci-fi theming and retro aesthetics. The technology that had carried humanity to and through the field of stars was clearly advanced, but great care was taken to ensure that it did not forget its roots. Starfield began active development around the time of Fallout 4's release in November 2015, using the sequel to Bethesda's famous clunker, the Creation Engine 2. More on that later in the video. After Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda Softworks, it was announced that upcoming titles like Starfield would be Xbox and PC exclusive. Starfield's core gameplay follows the general model that Bethesda has laid out over the past couple decades. Combat flows very similarly to Fallout 4, and there are lots of choices to be made in how to navigate different situations. Spaceships and jump packs add new means of movement, both planetside and throughout the Milky Way. There are also many factions to interact with, some of which can be joined. The perk system combines a couple of previous iterations from older games, while also adding in a new tier system. Perks in Starfield are known as skills, and do not rely on any sort of base stats like the special stats from Fallout. Instead, they are divided into 5 categories and 4 tiers within each. 5 skill points must be spent in a tier before a new one is unlocked. Skills also have ranks that can be unlocked with a skill point after completing a specific challenge. A reminder before we get too far in the video, I have included chapters for easy navigation just in case you want to avoid the plot recap or whatever else. Find those in the description to skip around. As with all Bethesda games, the playable character has a title before the player even gives them their name. In Starfield, players control the Spacefarer in their quest to uncover the secrets of the universe alongside Constellation. And don't worry, the name can be changed later by visiting Enhance if you get tired of your first choice. Small aside, which Bethesda protagonist do you think has the coolest title? Personally, my favorite is the Chosen One from Fallout 2, but let me know yours down in the comments. The player first meets the Spacefarer as they descend into the bowels of a mine on Vectera. They are a brand new employee of Argos Extractors, and this is their first day on the job. During the elevator ride down, they meet Supervisor Lynn and a coworker named Heller. The trio exit the elevator at the bottom of the mine shaft, and Lynn directs the Spacefarer to pick up a cutter. This laser weapon is used to mine metallic elements and will very shortly be used to set Starfield's entire plot in motion. As the trio go deeper into the mine, Lynn and Heller discuss the job and the eccentric client who is paying them to unearth, well, unvectera, something special. Eventually, they pass through a wall that has just been excavated, and the Spacefarer is sent in to retrieve this mystery item. As they descend, communications become spotty, and gravity seems to start playing by a different set of rules. The Spacefarer uses their now trusty cutter to dislodge an oddly shaped and vaguely curved artifact from the rock and experiences a cosmic vision upon contact with it. This causes them to lose consciousness, and they awaken to a concerned Lynn and Heller who prompt the player to customize their player's appearance, traits, and background. Once this is complete, Lynn's contact promptly reaches out, and she leads Heller and the Spacefarer outside. Turns out the contact is Amundsen Barrett, a member of Constellation. He lands in an old Discovery-class ship called the Frontier and engages in brief conversation with Lynn before Crimson Fleet pirates who had been chasing him land and attack. This is where the Spacefarer gets their combat tutorial as they and the miners join the fight. After the pirates are taken care of, and after another short conversation, Barrett gives the Spacefarer his watch and sends them on their way to meet Constellation. Upon taking off from Vectera, the player is met with another tutorial, this time centered around navigation and combat in space. Multiple Crimson Fleet ships ambush the Frontier, prompting Vasco to suggest eliminating the local captain in order to discourage further attacks. Once that is taken care of, the Spacefarer heads to the Lodge in New Atlantis to meet with Constellation. They talk with Sarah Morgan, the leader of the group, about the situation on Vectera and the artifact that has been uncovered. During the conversation, they find out that their vision was similar to another that Barrett had experienced on contact with a different artifact. As the newest artifact is placed with those already in Constellation's possession, they begin to react with each other. This sparks further curiosity from all the Constellation members present and vindicates them in their search for answers. It is at this point that the game opens up, and the player can technically decide to go wherever and do whatever they please. That said, a bit of background may be in order. Though Starfield takes place in the 24th century, its story began far earlier. In 2138, Dr. Victor Isa invented the grav drive. Humanity had already managed to land on Mars by this point, but this breakthrough would allow faster-than-light travel. When Earth's magnetosphere collapsed in 2203, use of the grav drive became instrumental to humanity's survival. Even prior to the collapse, interstellar colonies were established beginning in the Alpha Centauri cluster in 2156. 3 years later, one of the two most powerful factions in Starfield, the United Colonies, was established. In 2189, the Freestar Collective broke away from the UC. These two factions would later engage in the Bloody Colony War, but this was resolved before the events of Starfield. Other factions encountered by the Spacefarer include Ryujin Industries, the Ecliptic Mercenaries, House Varun, and the Sanctum Universum. Anyway, assuming you want to progress through the main story, let's get back to your next task. After this interaction, Sarah tells the Spacefarer that they will be working together for a bit. Sarah has a lead on another artifact, which leads her and the Spacefarer to the Sol System after speaking with Commander Tuala of the United Colonies Vanguard. The pair follow the lead to Sidonia on Mars and track down and save a missing Vanguard named Moara who had the artifact in his possession. Once the artifact is returned to the Lodge, the Spacefarer is handed off to Sam Coe to follow another lead. This one takes the new duo to the planet Aquila in the Cheyenne system, capital of the Freestar Collective. Upon touching down, Sam and the Spacefarer head to the local Galbank, where Solomon Coe's maps were left for safekeeping. There is a brief hostage negotiation with members of the Shaw Gang, followed by an equally brief family squabble with Sam's father after he finds the maps are gone. The duo then travel to the spot indicated in the maps, awkwardly enough a hideout for the Shaw Gang, and retrieve the artifact. Upon exiting the cave, Sam and the Spacefarer are confronted by Shaw herself, who must be dealt with before bringing the artifact to the Lodge. Another similar type of mission follows, this time with Walter Stroud. It takes place on Neon and sees the Spacefarer attempting to obtain another artifact from Nikolaus Slayton, while being supported by Walter's wife, Issa Eklund. Upon leaving Neon, the Spacefarer is confronted by an unusual ship called the Helix. They are advised by the pilot, who identifies himself as Starborn, to turn over the artifact and cease the search for more. Whatever is decided, Walter and the Spacefarer return to the Lodge. Since Barrett has not yet returned, the Spacefarer treks back to Vectera in search of him. After landing, they find out from Lynn that the pirates returned and both Heller and Barrett were taken. Following a brief search, Heller and Barrett's last known location is revealed and the Spacefarer sets off after them. They find Heller first in the wreck of the pirate ship and continue on to the location he provides for Barrett. A Crimson Fleet captain named Matsura is holding Barrett and must be dealt with. However the situation is handled, Barrett and the Spacefarer return to the Lodge. Note, the 3 previous tasks can be completed in any order. Following these introductory missions with the core members of Constellation, the Spacefarer is introduced to Vladimir Sal. This ex-Crimson Fleet pirate lives on the Eye, Constellation's star station used to run deep space scans. Using the data provided by the Eye, Vladimir directs the Spacefarer to retrieve more artifacts and visit temples on randomized planets, and eventually directs them to the Scow to relieve Captain Petrov of yet another. Upon returning to the Lodge, Noel reports that the Eye has gone dark. Vladimir sends a transmission reporting a Starborn had attacked and was headed towards the Lodge to steal the artifacts. This threat, revealed to be the Hunter, also contacts the Lodge and proclaims that Constellation's part in glimpsing the Unity is over. The Spacefarer is presented with the choice to rush off to the Eye to check on the Constellation members there, or stay and defend the Lodge. No matter which choice the player makes, someone dies in whichever location they do not choose. This will be the companion with the highest affinity. Following the attack, Matteo Catri tells the Spacefarer he has heard of the Unity before, prompting a visit to the Sanctum Universum for further insight. The Spacefarer is also advised by Noel to build the Armillary, the construct that the artifacts come together to form, either at an outpost or in their ship. Either way, more Starborn will be attracted to the Armillary wherever it is built. From here, the Spacefarer and Constellation as a whole begin to learn much more about the artifacts and the conflict they have found themselves in. Visiting the Sanctum Universum and talking with Keeper Aquilus reveals a link to House Varun and the mysterious pilgrim whose path must be followed. Following the pilgrim's trail leads the Spacefarer to multiple locations and eventually culminates in a puzzle which reveals their destination, the last star in the Scorpius cluster. There, they encounter the Scorpius, the Hunter's ship, and are invited on board to parley with both the Hunter and the Emissary. It is at this point the veil drops and they reveal all about the artifacts, the Starborn, and the Unity. They also reveal their identities. The Hunter is Keeper Aquilus, driven to violence in the pursuit of individual power by a belief that humanity is unworthy of the Unity. The Emissary is a member of Constellation, specifically whichever one died when the Hunter attacked the Lodge, and serves as something of an equal and opposite force. They are driven by a belief that the power of the Unity needs to be shared in order for humanity to advance further. The Unity is, more or less, the center of our universe.
Give or take 50 feet.
Well, technically, the center of all universes. Once the Armillary is built, any grav jump will transport all those on board to the Unity. Anyone who chooses to pass through it will be regenerated as Starborn in another universe. Many of the Starborn encountered by the Spacefarer are simply looking to pass through the Unity again, hopping from universe to universe as if addicted to the feeling. Each time they jump, they are able to gain more power. As the Spacefarer prepares to leave the Scorpius, the Emissary sends them to Luna in search of another artifact. Yes, I'm talking about the Moon. No, I won't call it the Moon, because Luna sounds better. Anyway, the search leads the Spacefarer to a NASA facility on Earth which houses the artifact. Bits of information found along the way reveal a disturbing truth. Dr. Isaac created the grav drive using an artifact that was uncovered on Mars. He did so with the full knowledge that this would cause the destabilization of Earth's magnetosphere and the subsequent death of every living thing on the planet. Despite the vision the artifact had given him, he persisted. The allure of exploring the stars was simply too great. After the NASA artifact is retrieved, the Spacefarer must gather a few more artifacts that have been located throughout the galaxy. They will also be given the location of more temples for each artifact they have acquired, which will unlock more powers. At some point during these events, Constellation will also hold a funeral for their fallen member. During their travels, the Spacefarer will pick up a distress signal from a research facility on Nishina. Upon landing, they will find the facility under security lockdown, but will be able to talk their way in by mentioning the distress beacon. Interestingly, the Chief of Security, Ethan Hughes, reports no such signal being broadcast. As the Spacefarer follows Hughes through the facility to meet with the director, they are transported multiple times to a much darker version of the facility that appears to have been destroyed. Director Patel is suspicious at first, but allows the Spacefarer to help. They also meet Maria, a scientist who helps them stabilize the spatial distortions, and a man named Raphael, who is the only survivor of the alternate research facility. Further exploration reveals that the scientists were of course experimenting with an artifact, and that they somehow managed to thin the veil between universes in doing so. The experiment must be shut down to retrieve the artifact, meaning that one of the realities must be sacrificed. It is technically possible to save both universes, but this requires very careful calibration on both ends before disengaging the power. Following this, with all artifacts not already claimed by the Hunter in hand, the Spacefarer heads to Masada 3. This is the agreed-upon meeting spot of the Hunter and the Emissary, and location of the final outstanding artifact that was previously discussed on the Scorpius. Upon arrival, the Spacefarer is given a choice between supporting the Hunter or the Emissary, or forsaking both and attempting to take the artifacts for themselves. Regardless of what choice is made, they will fight through an ecliptic base containing lots of mercs and multiple Starborn. Once they reach the temple buried underneath the base, the Spacefarer must deal with whichever Starborn they did not support, or both if they decided to go it alone. One way or another, they get the final artifact and unlock the phase-time power. From there, with all pieces of the Armillary in hand, they can enter the Unity. Doing so will put the Spacefarer face to face with themselves, and will show them a glimpse of the impact they had on their universe. They will then be given the choice to either enter the Unity or leave and remain in this universe. The latter option is not permanent, but entering the Unity certainly is. Once entered, there is no returning to the original universe, meaning all relationships and progress are essentially gone, or at least inaccessible. Those things are not erased, but the Starborn are randomly thrust into a new universe when passing through the Unity. So, the Spacefarer is regenerated as Starborn with a fancy new suit and ship and is given a choice. Do they go through it all again? Track down the artifacts again and again, hopping from universe to universe in search of power, unmoved by the possibilities of an endless multiverse? Or do they settle down? Perhaps take after the traitor, another Starborn who passed through the Unity once and decided that was enough. Welcome to New Game Plus. Regardless of whether the player decides to play through the main story again, the Spacefarer will now have access to unique options and dialogue in many missions and conversations due to having experienced these situations before.
You might have a larger role than I realized. Mistake on my part.
So, that was a lot. Let's talk briefly about how Starfield has evolved over the past year. Being a Bethesda game, it had and has lots of features, that have been addressed over time.
All of this just works. I'm not kidding.
I love Bethesda games, but god damn are they buggy. Aside from those, the game went largely unchanged until May 2024. The update released on May 15th included multiple new features, including some new settings, the ability to decorate your ships, and perhaps most importantly, maps. Another update released on June 9th, 2024 included creations. These are mods made for Starfield which can either be paid or free, depending on the choice of the publisher. There is a selection of creations, both free and paid, made by Bethesda, and a large number of player-made creations. Paid creations are purchased using creation credits which can be bought with real-world money, though owners of the Premium Edition were given 1,000 of these credits for free. Also included in the update were some new Trackers Alliance missions and the ability to customize melee weapons and create ammo from scratch. The August 20th, 2024 update included a new vehicle called the Rev 8, which is very reminiscent of another vehicle from a certain other sci-fi series. It can be purchased from any ship services technician and will automatically spawn upon landing on the surface of any planet. Skyrim in Space was initially teased over 6 years ago with an announcement posted on June 10th, 2018. That video got over 3.7 million views and over 41,000 likes on YouTube. Subsequent trailers have garnered nearly 30 million views on Bethesda's official channel, and even more from other channels like Xbox that posted trailers as well. Bethesda fans and RPG fans alike were curious about what this new universe would hold, and were excited to see it come to life. That said, Starfield's launch came and went without all the usual fanfare that accompanies a major Bethesda title. People were having fun with it, sure, but they also had quite the list of complaints about it, as evidenced by the many reviews posted to YouTube. It was no Cyberpunk 2077 by any means, but at launch it did not live up to what many had hoped for it. This is further reinforced by its score of 83 on Metacritic, while the user score sits at 6.8. Reviews most often reference a few specific grievances: performance, customization, and the lack of a local map planetside. Many players experienced a range of issues including frame rate drops and bugs, though these were mostly visual in nature. To be clear, the usual Bethesda brand quest-breaking or even game-breaking bugs were not really a complaint in this title because they weren't as prevalent as they have been in the past. That's not to say bugs weren't present. Each patch has included quite the list of bug fixes, but like I said, the issues most faced were frame rate drops. The same update that introduced the Rev 8 also introduced a performance mode for the Xbox Series S to address this. The customization issue is somewhat surprising given the sheer amount of stuff in Starfield, but there were stunningly few options for the player to modify their belongings. From weapon mods to home furniture and outpost modules, players simply felt like something was missing. There were lots of objects filling every livable space around, but fairly little in the realm of things to be built. Some of this has been addressed in the updates I discussed earlier, and so far the changes seem to have been well received. Not having a local map is a pretty self-explanatory issue and has since been addressed as previously mentioned, but I just want to take a moment to provide context on this. This is what people were complaining about. And they finally implemented this in response. Starfield's first DLC, Shattered Space, comes out at the end of this month, and there was a fair amount of hype surrounding it. Many fans seem to be hoping it will breathe new life into the game, but that remains to be seen. There is still one complaint that has yet to be addressed in a capacity that satisfies the majority of the fanbase. Put simply, many feel that Bethesda overpromised and underdelivered. Lots of reviews share the same sentiment that the sum of Starfield's parts is simply mediocre. There are differing perspectives as to why this is, but most reviews seem to cite a perceived focus on quantity over quality, and, paradoxically, a certain hollowness in the role-playing. The release of creation support would seem to serve as a means of re-engaging the player base and ensuring that those still playing stay engaged. But this may not satisfy everyone. Bethesda games hold all of the top 5 most modded spots on Nexus Mods, but Starfield isn't even sitting in the top 10. To be fair, it is much newer than all of the top 5, but Baldur's Gate 3 was released only a month before Starfield, and it has nearly 1,000 more mods posted for it. Does this mean anything? I suppose we'll find out. Okay, before I really get into my own thoughts here, I just have to ask, what did any of you expect? So many of the reviews I read while researching for this video basically decried Starfield, a Bethesda game, for feeling like a Bethesda game. I'm not saying they are infallible by any means, but I do feel like you kinda have to know what you're getting into with a title like this. Same general design philosophy, same quirky engine, Same world so large you could lose yourself in it. It's a Bethesda game through and through. Now, with that said, I want to go through the things already mentioned up to this point in the video and give my perspective. Starting at the top, the aesthetics. Honestly, no notes. I love the retrofuturism of the ships and technology. It may not always be the prettiest thing in the world, but it is practical, functional, and reminiscent of a time long past when humanity had yet to touch the stars. I also absolutely love the flowy architecture of New Atlantis and Neon's glow. Moving on to the ever-present elephant in the room, Bethesda's creation engine. I called it a clunker earlier, and I stand by that if you only look at it in comparison to other more widely used game engines. Bethesda games are famously buggy, partially due to the use of their proprietary engine, but they are also famously expansive in ways that simply have yet to be replicated. Did you know that the creation engine keeps track of the location of every single item and character in the game world at all times? I didn't before writing this script. That's insane, and already begins to help explain some of the common quirks found in Bethesda games. Everything moves. Any lootable object has full physics and can be thrown or knocked off shelves, or tossed on some shopkeeper's head so they don't see you stealing. You don't magically spawn a brown paper bag when you drop things from your inventory. Because of this, the world feels more alive and tangible. It has caused some weirdness over the years, notably a moving subway car in Fallout 3 that was actually a hat worn by an NPC, but you'd never know that unless you clipped out of bounds. The creation engine is responsible for worlds that function like living, breathing organisms. Characters interact with objects, the player, each other, and their surroundings in ways that are unique to the engine. It's what makes Bethesda games stand out, for better or worse depending on who you are. It's why I asked what everyone else may have expected from Starfield, and it's why I love Bethesda games, even mediocre ones. I have somewhat mixed feelings on Starfield's gameplay. On one hand, many of the mechanics are borrowed from other Bethesda games, which I just mentioned I love. On the other hand, that means there isn't much actually new going on. Controls are very much like Fallout and the Elder Scrolls with fully mappable buttons. Tried and true, nothing wrong here in my book. Combat feels like a nearly identical clone of Fallout 4, with Starborn powers filling in for Skyrim's shouts. This isn't a bad thing per se, especially given some of the past combat systems created using the creation engine, but I was hoping for a bit of evolution. Ship combat, and especially ship building, was a welcome addition. I personally haven't done much with shipbuilding myself, but I know it has been widely popular and some players have made some absolutely insane creations. Another new mechanic also introduced the somewhat VATS-like targeting control systems, provided the player has acquired the skill of the same name. The skill tree is honestly one of the biggest reasons why I feel conflicted regarding Starfield's gameplay mechanics. In theory, it sounds super cool. It takes classic level-based progression, combines it with Skyrim's upgrade as you use the skill philosophy, and keeps things split pretty evenly across 5 different skill trees. Each Spacefarer also begins with a background that offers 3 skills for free. In theory, this is great. In practice, it is a hell of a grind. To unlock every skill, you must reach level 328, requiring a total of 9,400,880 experience points. That, and you must complete a challenge to unlock rank 2, 3, and 4 of each skill. I'm sure the intent here was to encourage specialization and highlight the role-playing aspect of the game, but I feel like maybe a Starborn should be able to get through this progression faster. And that doesn't even include the powers. Talk about repetition. I do have a few other small notes on gameplay before we move on to plot. The Spacefarer's base carry weight NO2, essentially used as stamina or action points, seem prohibitively low. They can both be increased by related skills as well as certain clothes or spacesuits, but as previously mentioned, this is a long grind and may detract from other potentially useful skills. The Spacefarer also does not seem to be as charismatic as some of Bethesda's other protagonists. There are fewer dialogue options, which can sometimes leave conversations feeling like you are always taking one of 3 or 4 paths. There are still skill and background-based dialogue options, but they are not implemented to the level of some of Bethesda's other titles. Can't complain too much though, considering it is still a return to form and a massive improvement over Fallout 4's dialogue. Something else I saw from multiple reviews that I considered putting in here as well is the requirement of constant fast travel. The amount of loading screens can get a bit annoying at times, sure, but objectively I don't think it's any worse than Skyrim or Fallout. Starfield does have a different feel since you can land on entirely different worlds and therefore can't just walk back to New Atlantis, but I think it works fairly well overall. We still get a sense of the vastness of the explorable galaxy without having to manually fly through it. The plot of Starfield, when it comes to the main story, goes through a bit of sputtering before it is finally able to get it in gear. The first few hours, honestly up until the point where you're confronted by the emissary, are fairly slow. It takes some time to introduce you to each of the members of Constellation and wave some other shiny locations and quest lines in your face before revealing the true stakes of the hunt for the artifacts. This can, depending on what you choose to do, result in playing for 10 plus hours without any clue of what a Starborn is. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. What really shines about the story of the Starfield and the Unity is what happens next. The way Starfield handles New Game Plus is truly inspired. Before entering the Unity, the Spacefarer will tell you how each major character and faction you had an impact on will be left, similar to the ending slides from Fallout. Then, after entering the Unity, you get to start again in a new universe with all the knowledge and power gained from the previous one, and the drive to find more. It is an elegant twist on the New Game Plus mechanic that keeps it perfectly intertwined with the developing plot. I also particularly liked the revelation that humanity's home was knowingly destroyed by the very thing that set it free. The multiple other factions and side missions, with their honestly extremely well-written storylines, give plenty of other room to explore. They also offer the ability to make new choices in every universe you visit. Combine that with probably the most dedicated modding community out there, and people should be playing Starfield for quite some time. Shattered Space and its exploration into House Varun look to be pretty interesting from the trailer, and Bethesda is still diligently supporting the game with updates. It has already evolved more in a year than some previous games have in their lifetimes. Was it worth buying a whole Xbox to play this game? Since the future of Bethesda titles are planned to be Xbox exclusive, and I am a slut for a good Bethesda game, probably yeah. If it was just Starfield though? Honestly, not really. I probably would have just bought it on Steam and played it on my boyfriend's PC when I got the chance. Am I disappointed it didn't come out on PlayStation? Yes. But we all live to adhere to the whims of capitalism, so what can you do? Long story short, Starfield definitely launched with some shortcomings, and Bethesda has been taking steps to address them. It plays with some interesting new concepts while sticking to a familiar formula that fans have come to love. I am curious to see how the story develops in Shattered Space, and while part of me would love to learn more about the mysterious creators, it almost seems like it might be better story-wise if they aren't revealed. The point of the story isn't the past, it's the future, and what we will do with the power we discover. All in all, Starfield is a mostly mechanically sound game with some fascinating story concepts and a gorgeous aesthetic. It may not be their magnum opus, but it is still a good Bethesda title nonetheless, and absolutely worth a play if that is your thing. Let me know if you have any differing opinions or if you have any suggestions of other media I should cover. Just don't start a fight in my comments. Please like the video if you enjoyed and join the family if you want to see more nerdy shit. Remember, love recklessly. Start with yourself.